Hi there. I assume you're here because you want to do a PhD. Well, you're in the right place. Here I'll tell you how to write a PhD proposal. Well, to be honest, any damn fool can write a PhD proposal. I wanted to be able to promise you that you get a PhD place, but I can't do that. What I'll do instead is to try to get you to the interview. After that, you're on your own. Well, look at you. I'm not surprised you want to do a PhD. Bright, young, enthusiastic, hardworking, ambitious. Excellent, all good qualities. You got very good grades. You got a great idea that might or might not be based on your thesis. Yeah, sure, you're good PhD material. So all you have to do now is to get your PhD, get your PhD place. Okay, let's turn it round and look at it from my perspective. Yeah, I'm a bit older, a bit grumpier. Well, fairly conscientious. I'm a good supervisor. I've got broad interests, and my department is looking for 2 PhDs. We've got grants for them, we have places for them. But to get those 2 PhDs, I'm going to have to interview 5 people, 6 at the most. And the problem is, I have got 90 applications in front of me. I don't know if you've seen what 90 applications look like, but it's pretty daunting. Now, yours is among them. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to spend hours reading each individual proposal. My objective is to get those 90 applications down to about 10 or 12 that I'll then look at in more detail before selecting or helping to select my department, choose which candidates we're going to interview. So my first task is to get about 80 of those proposals off my desk into the dustbin, and I will not be looking at them again. If yours happens to be in that pile, yeah, then we won't be seeing you in my department. So your task in writing a proposal is to make sure that you get into that last 10, and from that last 10 that you actually get the interview position, and from there on, we'll see how it goes. So there's one important mental shift you have to make. You think you should get a PhD because you're a good student. Well, stop that. That's not what I'm looking at. I have 90 good students on that pile, probably most with good grades, many with good ideas. So I'm not looking for a good student. I am looking for a promising young researcher. And that is what you have to become if you're going to actually interest me and my department in employing you. Now, most PhD proposals ask for 5 steps. So these are them in principle, and then I'll go through them in more detail. The first one is, what is your question? What are you going to do? Then we look at what's been written about the subject. You then comment on which sources, which approaches you're going to use. Then you reflect on what difference it's going to make to the subject. And then there's one final clinching step, which I'll come to at the end. We'll see whether that is really the vital step to get you that PhD interview. So let's go to the question. There are various ways you can frame that question. They're very important. And many people say, I'm going to study X. Yeah, okay, come on, tell me more. All right, so we refine it. I'm going to study the impact of X on Y. What difference does this particular factor influence the totality? Okay, that's a bit better, but come on, stimulate me a little more. How about I'm going to study the relative importance of one element of X on Y? I'm going to home in on a series of factors and then explain it. And then, why not tell me why you're going to do it? I'm going to do it because it will shed light on X, Y, Z, because it highlights one particular aspect of the problem over others, because I have a relative approach to the question. Many people approach the PhD proposal with almost an open book, as though nobody has ever written about X on Y, and here you are to solve all of the problems, none of which you're going to specify. So you want to come to the interview? My advice is get real. Now, the second one is the literature. What's been written about it? What do people say about the subject? And here I suggest you write a complete literature review of 30 or 40 pages, and we cover this in one of the other podcasts. And when you've written 30 or 40 pages, you compress it all down to that 1 page or so that's required in the application. Now, whenever I tell students this, I get a yelp of protest. Yeah, why should I do this? They say, I haven't got enough time. Look, the PhD's got to be in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I say, okay, you've got 3 weeks. Doesn't take that long to sketch out a literature review. Yeah, but I'm busy with my final thesis at the same time. Yeah, okay, sorry, so make more time. Look, you're going to be spending 4 years of your life on this. Isn't it worth taking it a little bit seriously? And then people say, well, but what's the whole point of doing a literature review? All they want is 1 page. Yeah, I suppose you're right. Look, many builds up for a PhD says, look, the first year you spend reading the literature, so to some extent it's the professor's fault for getting you into this position. But on the other hand, the first thing you're going to have to do if you actually get the PhD position is to write a literature review. So why not get it up front? And the important thing then is when you get to the interview, at least you'll know what you're talking about. And that's very, very important. So get a literature review, sketch it out, make sure you see all of the aspects of the problem, the discussions on them, and then condense that into that 1-page literature review. Now, then we come to the sources that you're going to use. And there's no point in saying, I'm going to use archives. I'm going to use qualitative data. I'm going to use quantitative data. No, have a look at what other authors use. What are the limitations of their individual approaches? How do they manipulate the data? And what are the problems with that manipulation? And then come back to what do you intend to do about it? So again, a critical, analytical approach to the sources you're going to use. Don't come up neo-naive and say, right, I've told you, that's the answer, now accept me because I'm good. And then you come to the end, what difference does it make? What is your contribution to the subject? Now remember, the definition of a PhD is an original and important contribution to knowledge. The definition of an MA, by the way, is an original contribution to knowledge. So what is the importance of what you've done? I mean, you're going to be spending 3 or 4 years on it. It's going to be 100,000 words or so, fully referenced. Okay, economists, political scientists, you might get away with less. But 4 years, come on, guys, you must have some idea of how you're going to change the subject. Now, then we get to the final step, and this is really very important. Reread everything you've been writing till now, those 4 or 5 pages, and pretend it's just all a case study. It's a case study of what? What is the bigger question that you're tackling? The bigger question, the framework to which this particular subject of yours belongs. Define that in 1 or 2 sentences and put it right at the front of your application. It's that that's going to keep you on that pile. It's that that's going to trigger my interest. And as I read the deep, reflective application, I'm going to get quite enthusiastic about it. I'm going certainly to want to see you at that interview. Now, when you're at that interview, you're on your own. But you'll be facing 2 sorts of candidates. The one are the candidates whose subject is close to the interests of one of my members of staff. So you've got a little bit of patronage. He might not even know you, you might even know your supervisor, but he is pre-inclined to look at you. And the second one are the people whose tutors have really helped them write their applications. They've got there for what's in writing, and this is why it's important you know what you're talking about. When I was at the EUIM Florence, we would interview for 25 places. We would spend 4 or 5 days interviewing about 80 or 90 candidates. And I tell you, the sigh of relief that goes through that interview committee when we see a good student who is well prepared, has a good concept, and gets offered the place. You get yourself to the interview, you get your place, and I hope you do very well. You get a job and change the subject and move the field and get all the gratification that you can get from a society that is willing to grant you the room to follow your interests for the next 3 or 4 years. So I wish you all the best of luck. So for now, I'd like to say goodbye.